5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm John Miglosh for the Wisconsin DMA and the International Society for Strategic Marketing. Okay, let's start off with Tom Fishburne, one of my favorites. Let's get over here to that. And high style consultant. I'm in my cat. I've been wearing jackets to work last week. Now it's going to be 90 today, so it's going to be up in the high 80s or 90, and a little bit higher on Wednesday. So I'm in my Hawaiian shirt. That's for the style consultant. Okay, are you sure we should base our marketing plan on everything just getting back to business as usual? This is the Zoom call, and this is the CEO. And of course, it's kind of a slam on CEOs. But Gartner study recently reported that more than half of CMOs, I guess that's the CMO, we can always poke fun at those, expect business as usual in the next 18 to 24 months. Okay. And, probably that's true because, as Ritson always says, it regresses to the mean or whatever. We basically are human and we go back to being human. Crises are crises, and we don't like that. We like the certainty of inaction. So we'll go with that. But Tom pointed out that, that's Tom Ritson. No, this is Tom Fishburne. Okay, and Mark Ritson. Having senior moments, it's getting more frequent. I admit it. You'll just have to put up with it. Anyway, a few years ago, Fishburne started hearing about VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And he thought it was a new marketing term, a new buzzword. The VUCA concept actually originated 30 years ago with the U.S. Army College. First coined the term in 1987. I launched Miglosh Marketing in 97. And, I didn't launch Miglosh Marketing. I went out on my own as a consultant, but I was using office space at the ad agency. So I was at the ad agency a couple of years, and you've heard how that worked out. Not much accountability from the agency side. They didn't like direct marketing. But anyway, I started that in 87, and the next week the market crashed, which is always a great time to start something, like now. So technically, in I think September, we will be 33 years of on my own consulting. And I had a deal worked out where I had to generate so much, and they got a percentage of that, and and I helped them land clients. So in the end, we came out pretty much even, or maybe they got even ahead. But it helped me get started. And then they wanted to move downtown, and I wanted to stay out in the suburbs. So 1990, January 2nd, right after New Year's, I left and founded Miglosh Marketing. Anyway, so a few years ago, HBS senior fellow, HBS big bank, argued that today's VUCA business environment calls for a VUCA manager. And he repurposed the acronym for vision, understanding, courage, and adaptability. But I think Tom rightly points out, when has business ever been usual? Instead of going back to work, we're always going forward to work. And I think that's a pretty good way to put it. Okay? Now let's go. I don't have these in this order, but let's talk about consumer confidence in the UK, because is it going back to business as usual? And here's a graph. Now I actually grabbed, I redid the graph and to show you a little clearer. Okay, so the blue line is the UK, and the black line is the black line is the UK. There you go. And the blue line is the US. And what we see here is that prior to Trump and Brexit, we can't just blame Trump for this, but prior to Trump and Brexit, the UK had more confidence than the USA did on a relative scale. And this is from the University of Michigan, a wonderful site. Oh my gosh, it's great. If you Google U.S. consumer confidence, you can go back 40 years or something. I think it goes back to 1960, so that would be 50, 60 years, 60 years. Woohoo! That's basically my lifespan. And you can see that there have been times when consumer confidence was higher, according to Michigan, than it was in January. But it was the highest it had been in a long, long time in January. And it was considerably lower also than it is now. So that was, to me, it was interesting and somewhat reassuring. We've been through times like this before. I remember in the 60s, I think it was Martin Luther King's assassination that triggered some of it. But there were tremendous riots across the country and burning, and some of those areas took 30 years or more to recover. It's really sad. And sadly, this generation doesn't realize how damaging that is for themselves. To burn the businesses in your neighborhood dampens investment and dampens reinvestment. And if you're going to build another convenience store or something, you might want to put it in a different spot. That's kind of how business owners think. But anyway, so both indices properly, since we're talking about the UK, plummeted in early 2020, and both have bounced back considerably from their lows. In, I think, April was the lowest. June there was a bit of a bump, and so that's kind of the way things look, right? But I think it's interesting that the U.S. in general has a more optimistic look right now than the UK. So take that for whatever you want. I think that the indices, the stock indices, also suggest that investors are more optimistic about the United States as an investment opportunity than they are in the EU generally. So if we take consumer confidence and investment rebound, it seems as though the world is giving an endorsement to our approach to opening the economy versus the delayed opening that we've seen in most EU countries. Okay, so anyway, just bringing you up to date. This was an interesting article. Fraud follows connected TV boom. Okay, we talked last week about apps that collect up old movies that no one wants, and they package a whole bunch of them up, and they'll build an app that says, free access to 200 classic movies. That's kind of the way it portrays it, And I don't know why. I think it was in a bin at Walmart, but one time I bought a collection of John Wayne movies, and they were from the very earliest movies he made, and they were sound but not much better. And it's really funny because something happens, and then in the town they say, well, let's form a posse, and a whole bunch of guys jump on their horses and ride out of town, and then you see them riding down this road, and then a little while later you see them riding the other way down that pretty much same road. When you talk about discontinuities film, they should have at least gone to the other side of the road, but who knows what was on there. And it'll be in movie after movie, that same clip of guys, lots of guys riding on horses will go by. Horses are they're pretty high maintenance, and you don't want to have to shoot that scene too many times, but it's in movie after movie after movie, and it really is historically great. But it was like 30 vintage John Wayne movies for $5 or $2 or something. So every now and then when I need a laugh, I plug that in, and the cinematography is amazing. We learned that in our Amway training. If you don't know what to say amazing, because it's ambiguous. It sounds positive, but it can be totally negative. It's not like good or bad. Amazing. It's just peculiar, except it sounds a lot better than peculiar. Okay, so anyway, connected TV is one of the fastest growing digital media channels and one of the highest for fraud. people think in digital somehow we're going to prevent the fraud. It just keeps climbing. And in the case of connected TV, CTV, I always thought that stood for cable TV, but it's up more than 60%. No, it's up 161% since last year. So that's more than double, almost triple. And woohoo! So, the report, a benchmark on the state of media quality. That's almost, we should put that quality in, amazing quality in quotes, addresses key issues about brand suitability. That means, is my brand, let's say I'm really big on sustainability or global warming, or I've convinced my whole company to not breathe, and now I'm on the oil company special on how fracking liberates the world and removes poverty. Let's just say. And so, when you put those two, both are probably wonderful opinions and have some truth, but when you put them next to each other, it makes the ad look really silly. And so that's one way that advertising gets damaged in digital TV, because you can't track it all. You don't know where your ad is exactly appearing unless you specifically buy NBA, ESPN spot. But if you just say, well, I want to be on popular websites, or I want to be on the cheapest websites in case we're trying to maximize return on investment. All these issues are rampant with fraud, suitability, viewability, and performance, because advertisers want to maximize return. That's what advertising is about, whether it's direct marketing or anything else. And so, dun-ta-da, it's tricky. And digital is really tricky. And I highly recommend you watch my webinar on direct mail ain't dead, and why direct mail, with its built-in labeled data set, which we're going to get to in a second, built-in labeled data set is the best foundation for machine learning and the best platform to launch you into the future, believe it or not. Check out my webinar. You can find it on YouTube, Periscope. Look for the thing that's like an hour long. It's just a couple weeks ago. And also contact me on LinkedIn, John Miglosh, LinkedIn, and then there's linkedin.com/IN and then /John Miglosh gets you there. Okay, let's get to the last story, which I thought was fascinating. Okay, a new tool aims to protect protesters from facial recognition with deepfakes. Now, this took me a long time to figure out what this was, because here's before and here's after. And the way you can see it is actually in this one face right here. And in fact, not just the face, but the eyes. So if we look at, and I don't see, you can't hardly see the red circle, but I circled this. This guy's eyes have slightly different distances from his nose, and slightly different heights. Okay? Whereas these eyes are like perfectly symmetrical to the nose and perfect height. Okay? And those slight differences are one of the key features in facial recognition. Not in facial recognition, but in individual recognition with their face. And so what they've done is they've used AI to take away the nuances of a face. He still has his distinctive eyebrow in both cases, but the eyes are perfectly horizontal and perfectly spaced. And that throws off facial recognition. Got it? So, but what this was created for, this was the fascinating thing for me. This technology wasn't created for the police. It was created because of GDPR. GDPR is the privacy legislation in the EU, which UK is also kind of signed on to. And I forget what it stands for, but I used to be able to spiel it out really well. And so what this technology is doing is taking a photograph. Maybe it was a snapshot of you for your memoirs, okay, that you were in this protest. I once marched with Father Grappi in Milwaukee when I was about 10 years old with my dad. We went down to Milwaukee, and then we had the protesters in our house. We had about 5 of them, or maybe a half a dozen. Stayed overnight on their way marching to the Capitol in Madison. Anyway, so I had some experience, but we didn't all have cameras in those days. So now you do a selfie at this point, and all of a sudden, maybe the authorities, and maybe this is Hong Kong, and all the authorities can start highlighting all these images and decide that you should be rounded up in the middle of the night or something like that. So you don't want to post that picture. Okay, so this company gives you the ability to anonymize without spoiling the picture. Although you might want to figure out what you do to your own if this is you, or whatever. But the reason it was created, this is the really interesting part, was because it was created for non-press. Oops, I got to change my underlining thing. Private non-press organizations that don't want to bother with collecting permission waivers from everyone in a given photo. So, if you take a picture of a baseball game, if you take a selfie, I have one of me at Wrigley Field. If you take that you have permission, because people essentially in a setting like a baseball game, there's tacit approval to be in the crowd, and the crowd does, and so everybody knows, baseball, basketball, everybody knows that the crowd is going to be in pictures. And so by showing up there, you are part of the crowd, and you lose the right to prevent someone from using your image, little teeny as it might be. However, when you're on a city street, you don't lose that right. And although, with so many, security cameras everywhere, maybe you do. I don't know. Maybe it's implied now. I think I could easily argue that if I were an attorney and someone objected to their picture being taken. You could say, well, you're on a city street and there were 17 cameras taking your picture already, and so by being out on the street, you de facto sign off on use. But anyway, be that as it may, the car, if you remember, part of the way we train in machine learning is by a labeled data set. And the labeled data set has pictures. Where's the crosswalk? And if you notice carefully, there aren't very many people in those pictures. That's because the people are not signed off. Well, this technology was created so you didn't have to sign them off and you didn't have to blur them out. You could genericize them to make them look still like people, so that the driving car can recognize the personhood of the blob, whereas a blurred face, imagine, and there was a case where a car, didn't stop for a pedestrian in a crosswalk. Maybe the car was used to seeing blurred out faces and didn't recognize a human face. So that's where this was created, and they were probably charging quite a bit for it. But now they've made it available to the public, so you can do that in your any given picture. But it was really for dealing with privacy regulations such as GDPR, which prohibit the collection of personally identifiable data. And it's one of the reasons why TikTok is in hot water, because they were saving the images of U.S. citizens in China, and they were caught doing it for about 18 months. And since it's kind of a selfie platform, it was a great way to do it. And then they were connecting that with their personal information. So, interesting how technology is like a tug of war, and it's used for one use and then it gets used for another use. And that's what we wanted to talk about today. But very, very interesting application. How it connects to machine learning, how it connects to advertising privacy. Have a great day. Like and share. Your friends will know you're smart. Bye-bye.